There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned in to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. That cuddly little fellow over there, well, that's Tim Dennis. And we are here wishing you a very happy Halloween. We've added a special bonus episode. Why, Tim?
Oh,
why?
Why? I don't know, because we didn't have any candy?
No, Tim, because I love these people.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but my love for these people transcends the word love, Tim, so much so that I had to get together a great show so that we could bring it out on Halloween, a bonus episode bridging this week to next week and celebrating Halloween together as only Darkness Radio can.
Oh yeah.
Our guest today, Tim, is a great guest. We've had him on in the past. I think he told me before we came on today, it's been 2 years since he's visited with us.
Oh, wow.
But he's back. His new book takes us into his most terrifying investigation of strange phenomena yet. In 2009, one woman from Pembrokeshire, now I'm going to butcher it, Tim, because he gave me a compliment about how the last time I was on, I was able to say the town nicely. Now I'm not so much. Pembrokeshire. Maybe that's it, believed she was abducted by aliens. Our guest, Gavin Davies, investigated the story. The book is available. We've got a link to the book on today's program. Click it, order it, get it, rate and review it. Harvest, the true story of alien abduction. Gavin, it's great to have you back on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me back on this creepy evening. And can I just say, Dave, you are phenomenal. I am convinced you must be half Welsh because 2 years ago, you successfully pronounced Haverfordwest, which no American host managed. And yes, you were quite correct. It is Pembrokeshire. But thank you so much to you and Tim for allowing me back with some more intense, controversial investigations. Thank you.
It's our pleasure talking about the weird and strange phenomenon. We've got a couple other stories coming up regarding alien abduction, and that's going to be spread out over the next few months. I know we've got some great guests, including one that Gavin helped set up for us. But this story, when you come at me, Gavin, and you tell me this is your most terrifying investigation yet, I knew this had to be our Halloween special. So let's dive into this case. Take us back to 2009 and introduce us to this woman whose life literally turned inside out.
Well, it was by accident, actually. I had just completed my ghost sector violation investigation, that really controversial, challenging, polarizing book, which was about spectrophilia and if demons and spirits could sexually abuse a human person. So I wanted to do something a little bit more easier because I suffer with bipolar and mental health issues, and getting involved really intensely with my subjects, brings out that in me. I'm a method writer. When I write about depression and anxiety and fear, I can really articulate that because I feel it. I can articulate it. And one thing with my investigations and my books is people say they get this really impending fear of dread and anxiety and depression and leaves them feeling miserable. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. Now, before 2009, in the murky Pembrokeshire past, Pembrokeshire is this beautiful, sleepy coastal community, okay? It's a big geography with loads of coasts and mountains, but a very, very small population. And apart from some oil refineries and a couple of military bases, there's very little there. And in the late 1970s, there was a huge UFO flap. And if you're into UFO mythology and you're not familiar with the Broadhaven Triangle, it's well worth investigating. It's really worth looking up. I do cover it in Harvest, the true story of alien abduction. But one of the main things that happened back then was 16 school children aged between the ages of 8 and 9 claimed they saw a UFO land in a field, or it wasn't landed in a field, it was actually trying to take off and it was struggling. And these children are very worried by it. And the headmaster, Ralph Llewellyn, he called them into exam situation, said, right, all of you draw what you saw. And pretty much it was identical. They drew a silver-shaped cigar with a dome. And the teacher kind of dismissed it, saying it's probably a sewerage truck. And one of the teachers went to the sewerage works and said, look, did you have a sewerage truck by the school? And they said, no, we didn't. It'd be impossible for us to get there. And that was kind of like the beginning of 5 years of intense UFO activity in Pembrokeshire. There was lots of hearsay and conjecture. It was the military, the United States Air Force were in Pembrokeshire laying huge cables under the Irish Sea to track USSR Russian submarines. So there's a lot of secrecy, but this myth was never really gotten to the bottom of. It was like an onion. The more you peeled away at it, the more people said that they saw something, said they lied, and people who said they had lied said they'd actually seen something. It was an amazing case. There was men in black. There was cattle moved miles. There was disembodied hands burning children. There were 7-foot silver-suited spacemen. And I thought, do you know what? I was a little bit too young to acknowledge what was going on and appreciate it. And I thought I want to do an article or maybe a book, or, I just wanted to have a look at my culture. It's a significant event happened on my doorstep. So I put, as I do on my website, theparanormalchronicles.com, anybody got any information? Anyone want to talk to me? Do you have some insight? I want to do this project. And I had an email off a woman saying that she had something about alien presence in Pembrokeshire and she'd like to meet me. So I met her, and she was in her early 20s, mid-20s, which would have really put her out of scope of when these events happened. So I thought maybe she was speaking on behalf of an elderly relative, an uncle, auntie, a mum, dad, who would something had happened to them in the 70s and 80s, and she was just kind of vetting me, just seeing what I was all about. But I was really surprised when this very attractive young woman, but very sullen, she was dressed in baggy clothes, she sat down with me, and she was so articulate. She's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life. And she was very hesitant to tell me that she had had her own personal experience, not in the 70s or the 80s, but now, recently, and it was still happening. And what really piqued my interest was, as an investigator, you have to kind of discern what is fantasy, what is delusion, what is mental health. And it's very difficult to do. As you will know yourself, Dave, being an investigator, it's such a fine line between mental health and what could be a perceived paranormal experience. So she'd had some experiences, considerable experiences with aliens and UFOs, but rather than it all being brought up via hypnosis, which is very common, she could actually recall it from memory. So we got talking. She was very worried about how I would present it. Her reasons were that it was cathartic. She wanted to unload. She wanted someone who could understand without judgment. She'd read my books and felt that I had done a very good job in Ghost Sex Violation and Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest, presenting paranormal terms without sensationalizing it, but just presenting it as fact. When I write my investigations, I will not tell you what the outcome is, what's going on. I will give you all the evidence and I'll let you decide. I'm not gifted. I'm not a medium. I'm not a psychic. I just present the facts as a journalist, and it's up to you. If you don't like it, that's great. If you think it's real, brilliant. Do what's good for you. So we signed all the disclosure forms in that I would respect her anonymity. I wouldn't do any digging to find out who her parents were, things of that nature. And we arranged for a second meeting at her house, not in public, which is a bit worrying when you're a male investigator going to visit a young woman alone. But I thought I'll see what she's like. And if I get the heebie-jeebies, I'll bring in a female psychologist. And her account absolutely blew my mind. More than ghost sex violation and more than my own experiences at the haunted horror of Haverfordwest House. Because if what Susan, this woman, says is true, this has a profound effect on every single person on the planet. You, Dave, you, Tim, myself, everybody listening. And to think that we are suddenly in this age of soft disclosure. For years, researchers claimed that the United States government was running a top secret program and research into UFO phenomenon. And then time and time again, the authorities denied everything, telling the media and the public there was no official interest in the subject. And UFOs for years have been written off as mirages, misidentifications, hoaxes and delusions, or at best, prototype aircraft and missiles operated by the US or maybe a country like Russia or China. Even though Project Blue Book investigated over 12,000 UFO sightings, of which 701 remained a complete mystery. A mystery, what were they? And UFOs have been seen by the police and the military, commercial aviators, doctors, nurses, politicians, royalty, scientists, and even presidents. But the media normally ignores it or ridicules it, portraying people as conspiracy nuts and fantasists, little green men and tinfoil hats. Mikhail Gorbachev, leader of the second most powerful nation at the time after the United States, said the phenomenon of UFOs is real and it must be treated seriously. The Russians know the truth. And I bet many people listening now have had their own experience, and they're not fantasists. They are rational people just wanting answers to what they have seen. And guess what? For years, we were told it was all nonsense. Then in December 2017, the conspiracy theories all came true. There was an actual secret UFO project, and these objects have been tracked and chased by our best aircraft, and pilots are out there matched and outmaneuvered by these objects. You know, the story didn't break on some UFO forum, a conspiracy website, but in a fact-checked article in the New York Times. And then in June, during the pandemic and US protests, when the world was tearing itself apart, another story emerged that the Pentagon was acknowledging this phenomenon. Yet most people missed out. They were distracted by the global events, and the news items slithered out during the most chaotic of times. So we're getting leaked digestible bits. So when we do start to get the bigger news, the bigger picture, then the general attitude will be, well, I knew that already. What's the big deal? There was no riots and mass shootings or chaos. The world would not end. We had just slowly been drip-fed the fact that UFOs exist. So guess what? We've gone in a tiny amount of time from UFOs are for fantasists and the crazy people and the delusional to actually there are objects visiting our planet and we don't know where they come from. And that's what makes Susan's story so terrifying, because we now know that these stories of alien abduction, hybridization, harvesting, whatever they're doing to us, we now know there's a kernel of truth. We now know that our government is admitting to us that there is something going on. And Susan was terrified. This investigation happened in 2014, way before this disclosure began. And the book was handed over to John Hunt Publishing in January of 2019. So there wasn't this sense of acceptance to what's going on. So with Susan's account, it's really terrifying because people are going missing. We have to start talking about this seriously. And that's my job with this book, right? Do you know that on average, 625,000 people go missing a year in the United States? Of course, the majority.
I know it's quite high, unfortunately. But, you know, I mean, a lot of that is people
mental
that
health,
are
murders, suicides,
right? Or just accidents, you know, out taking a selfie on a cliff edge and not paying attention and they're down, right? So there's a lot of these things. And I'm wondering now that selfies have become so popular, if more people have gone missing, seriously, because of getting around like that. But what is that small window that 1%. Is just unexplainable? Yeah.
There's 1% vanish into thin air with no explanation. You know, of course, there's cults, there's murderers, serial killers. People just have enough suicides. People walk in the ocean. People get kidnapped by cartels and gangs. Of course, this all happens, yeah. People forcing the human trafficking and drugs and prostitution, yeah. Now, one person goes missing every 90 seconds in the UK, this island. 30,000 people a year go missing every year in Australia, yeah? So the way I look at this, right, is What if a Chinese, Russian, or North Korean aircraft was coming back and forth unchallenged into American airspace? How would that make you feel as a nation? What if those same people were taking your family, friends, people from your community and abducting them, torturing them, experimenting and harvesting them like animals? We'd go to war. So we now have to ask the government to help us, protect us if they can, and start with the truth. Susan and her account in Harvest, the true story of alien abduction, is not the only one. There are thousands every month, hundreds of thousands over decades, and maybe millions over centuries. And we need to start taking this seriously. And let's stop people being harvested. It's in our hands to demand answers. So that was the passion that has grown from beginning this testimonial, this account, this investigation with Susan. Because when you get down to the brass tacks of it, if this is mental health, that's another spectrum of study altogether, right? There are things that are accountable for it. But if what is happening to Susan in Harvest, the true story of alien abduction, this is horrific. This is butchery on a scale unimaginable. We are talking about people being treated worse than animals, worse than cattle, worse than insects. You know, these creatures, these aliens, these beings, whatever you want to define them as, they have no regard for us. They have no respect for us. The same way as when you eat a pork chop or a chicken breast, we don't care what happened to that animal. We just want to eat it. And we have no idea what they want with us. Paul Anthony Wallace in Escaping from Eden, he claims that there is a cabal of alien races, and some of them are doing good stuff, some of them are doing bad stuff, but all of them have got an agenda. And one part of these creatures, they're just harvesting us, and we have no idea why. We could be looking at aphrodisiacs, meat farming, pheromones, who knows? But something horrific is happening to people all over the world.
Jeez. Well, you're painting a pretty bleak story, Gav.
Yes, very bleak.
Possibilities. Now, can I ask you something? Do you mind if we reel back for a second?
Of course. Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
No.
I'm very passionate about this.
I love that about you, and I love that you bring us the story this way. But, you know, we've been very open on the show, especially with my dealing with depression and anxiety, and I love the fact that you were very open about your own struggles. But I'm just curious, as someone who examines these cases, do you ever have a concern that by dipping into these cases and peeling back these mysteries, that it will affect you and impact you negatively? Because again, somebody with, depression and anxiety and bipolar disorder, if you're hearing all of this negative and terrifying stories, how do you shake that? How do you separate yourself from what's being told to you and our very human reaction to the experiences that are unfolding?
It's incredibly difficult, Dave, and both of us have been very much advocates for mental health support, especially within the male population. It's not natural for men, particularly our age, to reach out and admit that they're suffering from, mental health maladies. And it's very difficult for me I go in as objective as I can as a journalist, and I come out absolutely riddled with the feelings of my subjects. I feel the fear, the anxiety. And this is why. This is my last investigation. Since I've started, I've done 3 investigations over the last 7 years, Dave. There was Haunted, Horror of Haverfordwest, Ghost Sex the Violation, and now this Harvest, the true story of alien abduction. In that time, I've had a mini stroke. I've been diagnosed as bipolar. I've suffered suicidal depression. And one of my bestest friends in the world yesterday was like, Gav, after this, I think it's time that you were done. You've done your job. You've gone out. You've presented these investigations, these subjects to the world. You've given people the opportunity to decide for themselves what is happening. You've given the subjects a voice. You've given them a catharsicism, and you have added your own little piece to the paranormal community, and it is incredibly difficult. It is very difficult to detach. Susan, the lady from Harvest, she's convinced she's going to die. She doesn't think she'll make it to 40. She's currently in Australia, trying to live her best days while she can. And that's a huge burden to have. And the passion I have now is for her, is for anybody out there, whether it's mental health inflicted or it is alien beings or dimensional beings. I am that voice, and this will be my last investigation. This is my swan song, and I want to do Susan and every single person out there who's had a UFO encounter, an alien encounter, believed they've been abducted or experimented or harvested in some capacity. I just want to do them justice. But to answer your question, yeah, it hurts. It really hurts. It's very difficult. After Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest, I sleep with the light on. I find it difficult to hold a relationship. It's difficult living with me, when you live in the darkness. You go in thinking you're shining a light, but you come out cloaked in the black, in the abyss.
This is, I wanted to point that out to listeners so they realize how impactful this is, and that unpacking the paranormal, examining it, digging deep into it for yourself. Reading the books is one thing. Investigating, putting yourself in the crosshairs of the supernatural is not something that should be taken lightly by any means. Even for those that are the most stable and well-natured, it can really affect and impact you. But if you are, and it seems that a lot of people are very much like us that are fascinated by this field, they do deal with forms of anxiety and depression. Read about it, watch the documentaries, the movies, the books that come out, the articles, listen to the shows. But I would suggest if that's your status, mental status, maybe avoid inserting yourself into that field, because it can and does impact and affect many people. And Tim, I think you can agree. I mean, we know a lot of people who've stepped away from the paranormal. We know a lot of people who were very prominent in it, who believe that, that are gone now and believed that the paranormal is what led to their health and mental downfalls, and, in some cases, murder and suicide.
Quite a few, yeah. And some people that I think not just physically or spiritually, but even just in their overall lifestyle, they think that the degradation of their lifestyle was caused by the paranormal, just financially, just circumstances in their everyday lives the degradation of that lifestyle was led by the paranormal.
Yeah, it can be very caustic to you to personally involve yourself in these investigations. So please, with that warning in mind, be careful when you decide you want to insert yourself into these investigations. What seems like a fun hobbyist thing to do can really become a slippery slope for many people. And, we know many people that are self-proclaimed mediums and psychics that have had to step away because they didn't do the work to protect themselves, that were alien enthusiasts that found themselves in the crosshairs of these beings for being there, or in some cases, some believe nefarious government conspiracies that have planted evidence on them to make them seem insane or like criminals or other issues. So it's just something to take into consideration. And with that said, Gavin, when you're going to expose and swing a spotlight onto something like this, are you worried that you're going to ping the aliens' radar as well and perhaps become an abductee yourself because of this?
I made a joke about this yesterday, funnily enough. I said, if I go missing, that will really fuel the conspiracy theorists then. Did the government take him, or was it aliens? I don't know. I feel like that I delve in and I delve out, and it does have a huge mental and emotional effect on me. I think that the way I present my work, the way I present my investigations, I think that I explore the psychological route. I always do, because I think that's healthy. I think we need to. I don't think you can encourage someone who might be having a mental collapse that it's actually ghosts and aliens. And at the same time, you have to be respectful to people who do believe they're having paranormal entities intrude on their life, that you aren't judgmental on them and give them a fair hearing. and point them in the right direction. And if I go missing, it is what it is. I'll know one way or the other then if it is true. I don't know. It's like Susan, she's terrified. She's convinced that this is real. And she's one of the most intelligent and articulate human beings I've ever met, which also gives you basis for being a fantasist. Because if you have that capacity for imagination and to add emotion to that fantasy, then something can come very, very real. And I really support your point about people run around with night vision cameras in graveyards shouting, show yourself, desperate to see something, or desperate to get evidence. And the mind is a very, very powerful tool. And if you want something enough, you want to believe something enough, you will start to make it happen. Psychologically, you will hear voices, you will see things, the power of suggestion. But if I go missing, it is what it is. I've had a good run. I'm 45, but if I don't, then it's been fun. It's been interesting. It's been very interesting. I never thought I'd get to do this. I never thought I'd be on a show with someone like you, Dave, and Tim. I didn't think I'd get to talk to millions of people in America and Britain. I didn't think my books would sell hundreds of thousands of copies. And the amount of feedback I get from people who just say, thank you so much for your authenticity and your integrity in presenting these cases. And I think that's a good legacy.
Well, let's dive back into Susan and her story. You go there to meet with her to hear more. And again, not quite sure who you're dealing with and what they're dealing with when she starts spooling this story out to you. Talk to us about your initial reactions and what really kind of struck you.
When I first went into the house, her disheveled appearance didn't suit her house. She was a very sophisticated person. When you go into these environments, you are literally a detective. You know that yourself. You're picking up on everything. What is she reading? What kind of property does she have? What kind of income is coming in, perceivable income? And one thing that struck me was her house was immaculate. And she had such a vast array of reading material, books, posters of art, Gothic art. This was a person who had great intelligence and a very sophisticated eye, a great appreciation for art, particularly Gothic art. And I noticed on the coffee table, there was a lot of books on psychology. And I was like, that was a bit of an alarm bell for me. I was like, this could be someone who is creating a fantasy or living in a fantasy, maybe unaware of it. So I started talking to her. And she just chain smoked the whole time. And her voice, I don't know if anyone has this feeling, but some voices trigger a very calming, pleasant sensation. It's called ASMR, auditory sensory. I can't remember what it is, but it's a very nice shiver you get down your body from certain voices. And she was so calm and deliberate. It was like she'd rehearsed it 1,000,000 times in her head. She either rehearsed it or she relived it. And her first account was that she was someone making moves in a profession. She was in education, studying to be a professional that would follow in her family line. So we're talking intelligent people and intelligent, in a very successful and accomplished career. And she was studying with friends in a college in a neighboring county. And there was 4 friends, they were thick as thieves, all studying to do the same thing. There was money in all the families. They were looked after. Their tuition fees were paid. They didn't need to do without. At a young age, 19, 20, they were all given cars. They were just basically faced in a direction and just given all the tools to succeed. So that was a bit shocking that somebody of that disposition and that ability was talking to me about UFOs and aliens. And the first main story that she told me, the first main account, was that her and her 4 friends went to a farm. One of the friends' parents owned a farm in the middle of nowhere. The parents were away. They went down, girly night, wine, pajamas, music, just a girly night, R&R. They work hard, they study hard, and then they would just let their hair down. And they called for a few boys to come over. And the boys were like, yeah, we're just in the pub. We'll be about 20 minutes away. Now, this farm was on a very, very long track, very skinny track. And once you're on the track, you can't get off. You have to commit to the track, get to the actual farm and reverse and go back up the track. So Susan, she needed a loo. They just called these lads. She went up to the loo and they were all giggling and making little jokes. And she went up to the loo and she sat in the loo and she said from the window next to the toilet, she could see headlights coming down the track. And she thought, oh, they can't be the boys because they've only just been called. They're 20 minutes away. So the lights came down the track. And then she said all the lights went out in the bathroom. She sat there in pitch black and the car lights just lifted and just went out of view. And next thing she claimed there was a huge bright light from the skylight above. And it was so bright, the whole room was white. And she had to cover her face with her hands. And she said she could see like the bones and it's like an x-ray through her hands. The light was so bright. So the light vanished and she was very perplexed, but she's a very rational person. She thought that either coincidentally the power cut was caused by some problem with the power lines and a power helicopter, an energy helicopter was out, because that happens a lot in Pembrokeshire, such a big place that helicopters just go out checking the lines. That maybe the lights on the drive or some kind of like tow truck and whatever. She just rationalized it, okay? She didn't think too much of it. She didn't think it was a drone because they weren't really that prevalent in 2009 in that area. So she went back downstairs and all the girls were, where have you been? Where have you been? And she said, to the toilet. I've been gone like 2 minutes. And the girls were lighting candles. They'd made a big fire. And one of the girls said, you've been gone 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And Susan, no, I haven't. All the phones were dead. But when they got the phones back working, Susan had, in fact, been gone 10 minutes. They didn't really think anything of it. They got a phone call from the boy saying their car broke down. That part of the story, she believes, is purely coincidental. She doesn't believe that the lights in over the farm and the car breaking down are related. It's just coincident, because otherwise there would have been an epidemic of cars breaking down all over Pembrokeshire at the same time. Now, next to the farm, adjacent to the farm...
Well, hold on one second. Let me ask you something now. When you're sitting there hearing this story, she's telling you this. I'm sure you're acutely aware of her physicality, her tonality.
Yeah.
When she's telling you this, is she giving you cues of being uncomfortable? Is she giving, kind of an insight into, is she telling a story, or are her eyes gone? Are you seeing her relive what's happening to her?
One of the things I do in every investigation is that you have to have a huge amount of level of scrutiny. So I'm telling you the story as you will read it in the book, but to get that amount of detail takes many times. We'll go back and back and back, and I will scrutinize everything. I'll ask questions all the time. What were you wearing? What was this? What was that? We need as much detail as possible. I need them back there. So Susan, I remember she was sat on a beanbag. She was a very tall girl. She was sat there just smoking, and she had that 1,000-yard stare. She was just like kind of like reliving it in her mind. She was visualizing it. She was there. And again, that doesn't really necessarily relate to it being truthful, because a fantasist can create a fiction and live it in their head. You know, writers do it, authors do it, film directors, anyone who's creative has a propensity to do that. But it was like she was... The best way I could describe it was the way she was communicating was like it was her last will and testament. She needed someone to record her experience because she knew she wasn't going to die. She did come a lot more emotional later on into the investigation, where she screamed at me how can I stop this? What can be done? And I can't do anything. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's all very well, Dave, us going into paranormal investigations and finding evidence. But what do you do then? You can't stop a haunting. Maybe some people can. You can't stop aliens. You can't stop a cryptid. All we can do is prove or disprove what's happening. And she sat there and she just chain smoked the whole time. This beautiful woman, dressed in baggy clothes, sat on a beanbag, just chain smoking constantly, to the degree that around her fingers were yellow.
How was this affecting you as she's telling this tale? I mean, were you getting shivers up and down your spine from what she was explaining?
No, I was very confused the first time, because everything she told me, she would excuse or have rationale for. But at the time, I thought it was this. Now, just to put into context some of the people that reach out to me, okay? I had a woman reach out to me this very week saying, would I like to interview her and write a book or whatever? Because she came home from work. Her husband was home when he shouldn't have been home. He was upstairs in the bathroom. She called his name. He didn't answer. She worried. She went up the stairs. She opened the bathroom door because he didn't reply. And she claimed there was an octopus in the bath and a skin suit on the floor. And that her husband was an octopus.
Ah.
Right?
Too many episodes of Doctor Who.
Yeah. And so I just said, oh, did you get a picture? And she said, oh, no, he doesn't like to be photographed. Last night I was doing an interview and somebody called in and said, oh, I've had all this alien abduction. I think it'd make a great Netflix series. I think it'd be a really good film.
Yeah.
Now, so what's your motivation now? Is your motivation that you want to be rich and famous? The people who are shy, the people who are wary, the people who are visibly shaken or affected, and they want to remain anonymous, and they don't want money, and they don't want anything. They say, all I want. And you spend a week, you spend 2 weeks, and then those weeks become months. And you do start to develop that relationship, that rapport. Anybody who lived in that building probably thought I was her boyfriend or I was her lover or whatever, because I was coming and going, a couple of times a week. And then once I had all the notes, I then had the process of putting it back together, and I'd have to go back because she didn't like using the phone, and I'd have to go back and say, look, I'm really struggling with this part of the puzzle, I don't want to use creative license. I don't want to just put 1 and 1 and put 3 because it suits the narrative, because so much of what happens to it is so surreal. I'm a huge fan of Whitley Strieber's Communion. And, being with the mind I have, I do find surrealism very attractive. I do like that kind of art and movie making and music and stuff. I'm a huge David Lynch fan, if anyone knows me. But this was so strange, David. It was so strange to try and... The bits that make sense, and the bits that don't. And it sounds like a ploy just to get people reading, right? But what I'd like is that everybody that can read Harvest, The True Story of Alien Abduction, right? And email me direct, right? I'll give everyone my email now. It's harvestalienabduction@gmail.com, right? That's harvestalienabduction@gmail.com. I want you to be an investigator and give me your interpretation of events. Because what makes sense to me might not make sense to you, Dave, because we are dealing, if we are to believe this is true, which I think, believe it or not, I'm thinking may actually be something to this, seeing our governments now admitting these UFOs are coming into our airspace. We need more people trying to work out what this level of communication is with a highly advanced, sophisticated being. It's like if you, Dave, got your cat, and you said to your cat, right, I'm going to put some beans in the microwave, and then I'm going to get into a car and go to a supermarket and buy a bottle of Jack Daniels. That cat has got no inkling what you are on about. It's just a series of sounds and images. There's no idea what's going on, right? There's no comprehension of what you were trying to explain and what your purpose is. And that's at the level these alleged beings are. They're at such a high level than us that just being in the very presence just defies all comprehension. It just snaps the elasticity of comprehension and what we know. And what happens to Susan, it just begins very slowly. And that night, next to the farm, there was a converted barn. It was bottom half was a garage, the top half was a holiday cottage. And what that is, visitors could come down and they could stay there in the summer, and it was a good revenue stream for the family, okay? So Susan bags eyes that she was going to sleep there, right? She's not scared of ghosts, UFOs. It's never crossed her mind. At this time, it's something that's just not on her radar. Her family aren't like that. They're not even a religious family. So they're not even into the whole God and Jesus and the resurrection and devil and all that. They're just not those. So they're very practical people. They are people of science, right? They're people of medicine. So Susan makes her excuse, but she does have a motive to why she wants to go to this house, right? To this barn. And that's because she smokes, and nobody knows she smokes. So she takes the dog with her. There's a family pet. And she says, I'm going to go there. Everyone's a little tipsy. The girls are like, come on, just stay in the house. She's like, no, I'm going to stay in the barn with the dog. So she goes upstairs in this beautifully furnished top floor cottage. And the dog gets on the bed. She goes down. She has a cigarette. She closes the door. She locks it. I asked her that question about 1 million times until she got angry with me, because I was just trying to find out, did she lock that door? That's a key piece of information to this story, okay? So she went back upstairs. She went to the loo. She went back to bed. She she kind of remembers the time. It was late. And within about an hour of falling asleep, she had this feeling there was someone in the room with her. It's pitch black now. She thinks there's someone in the room. She can hear the dog snoozing on the bed. She perceives some movement, something black moving in the room. The dog wakes up, starts growling at something. The dog jumps off the bed, or she can feel the weight lift on the bed. The dog jumps, and there is a strange sound, followed by a flash of blue smoky light, and there's like a howl of pain from the dog. There's another flash of blue light. Then this intense light bathes the room from above. All the skylights are just beaming down intense light. Susan has just sat there, just not knowing what is going on. Is this a dream? Whatever. And then, just as the lights go, a strange, what she described it as was a face, but it was like if you had a motorcycle helmet, the proper one with the visor, right, and you put it on back to front. She said there was like a tall, skinny person with a huge head, a shiny head, like a reverse helmet staring at her face. So she woke up, and it's like 7 a.m, and she's like, I've just had this most horrific nightmare. She's ill. She's got pains in her stomach, pains in the small of her back. She's describing horrific period pains. She goes to the toilet. She's got diarrhea. She's got a dry mouth. She's got a nosebleed. She's got a pain in her vagina. It's just like she's just not feeling well. And she was like, this is like no hangover. And when she went back to the bed, there was a broken glass on the floor. So she thought, oh, that must have been the nightmare. But she couldn't find the dog. So she assumed that one of the girls must have got up and come in and got the dog while she was asleep and taken the dog for a walk. So she left this cottage, this upstairs building, and goes into the farmhouse. And all her friends are still asleep. There's no dog in the kitchen. And she says to her friend, like, oh, have you come in to get Lenny, the dog? And she's like, no. And then the friend's like, where is it? Where's the dog? Where is he? She's like, I locked the door. And she said, did you lock the door? And she said, yes, I locked the door. She said, you couldn't have. Where is he? So all 4 friends then really hung over and cold. And, it was early in the morning are trying to find this dog. Eventually they have to call the vets and the council to see if there's any roadkill. And the dog was never seen. It was never seen again. And Susan swears on her life that she locked that door that night. And then that was when a series of events led her to believe that that wasn't a nightmare. There was more to this than what she could ever imagine.
Wow. Let's do this. We have to take a quick break. We'll come back and continue hearing the story of Harvest, the true story of alien abduction. G.L. Davies, our guest today here on Halloween. This is Darkness Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from
beyond the darkness.
Welcome back. We hope Halloween is treating you well. I know this is a strange new world we live in and things are not as we are used to, but at least we can celebrate here together on the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio, special bonus Halloween episode, Harvest, the true story of alien abduction. Gavin Davies invites us into his most terrifying investigation, and that is exactly what he is delivering. All right, Gavin, as we look into this story a little deeper, you're hearing these horrific feelings of pain this woman is dealing with, the high strangeness of time seeming to shift, things not adding up for her. As she is explaining this, can you sense fear and awe from her, or is it more like confusion? What do you describe her demeanor as?
As I got to know her, especially during those initial interviews, those initial sessions, there was a resignation. She had, it's like, I imagine it's like someone who's found out they're terminally ill. And it's a case of, okay, I've got to deal with it. You know, my days are numbered. There was anger and frustration. There was this, why me? Now, something I find that you probably discovered as well with paranormal investigating is that a lot of people, I personally believe, and I don't want to make a judgment here, they want something special to happen to them. They have very mundane, ordinary lives. They want to be the victim of a haunting. They want angels or demons to come into life. They want to be abducted by aliens because it makes them special. You know, it gives them more meaning than just sat in front of a TV, putting on weight, eating junk food, or whatever the case is, right?
Why'd you look at me when you said that, Gavin?
You're a beautiful man, Dave. You look like a wrestler. You look like Stone Cold Steve Austin, you know.
Well, I look like the guy that ate Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'll take that. You're right. So she's not there. She doesn't seem to fit this this concept of somebody looking for this attention.
We've met him a million times, Dave. And again, no disrespect to anyone, because everyone is entitled to lead their life the way they are. That's the beauty of you know, free will, free speech. And I've met people who claim they have mediumship abilities, they're psychic. I've met people who all kinds of manner of paranormal extraordinary events around them. And again, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor, but you get that sense that, okay, I'm not going to dismiss you, I'm not going to be rude, but I'm not necessarily convinced that something is out of the ordinary. I think you need something important to happen to you. You're lonely, you're scared, you're sad, your life has no meaning, right? Susan, just by the way she was, now she could be the greatest con artist in the world. I don't know what she's getting out of it because, you know, this is my last book. She's not getting any, you know, financial remuneration. You know, there's nothing in it for her. She's anonymous. She's not sat on the Larry King show or, you know, on a big, she's not talking to you right now, right? There's a sense of anger, despair, resignation, as I think was the key thing. There was a coldness, especially at the beginning. There was a very matter of fact. It was like she had rehearsed her story because she actually says, I don't want to put my name to this because every bully and troll and skeptic will pick my story apart for that one kernel that they can jump on and say this is all fake and fraud. And she actually said, do you know what? If they want this, if they want what's happening to me, do you know what? They can have it because I don't want it. There's nothing in it for her. You know, she's gone. She's gone. She doesn't live around here. She's not a celebrity. She's not making any money of this. She's gone to Australia to what she believes is just to try and live her life. You know, she doesn't believe being on the move and being Australia is going to stop what's happening. She just believes that maybe I've got a year, 2 years, 3 years, because what happened, what she saw made her believe that there's thousands of women in particular being harvested, and it begins with small extractions, needles, things, groping, pulling, scraping the vagina, the anus, the nose, things that you can read in any book about UFO abductions, right? You can see that in a film, you can see that in Communion, Fire in the Sky, okay? It's not new, but she believes she's had that inflicted on her, but she's actually seen the full process, right? And this is what intrigued me, is because it wasn't through hypnosis. Most of the experiences were in such a surreal state. It was very difficult to put it together. And people who were reviewing the book who aren't into the subject have found it fascinating just based on the surrealism and the imagery, just on the candidness of this, the frankness of this investigation. But Susan believes that there are layers or levels of harvesting from the tubes and the thing. Like, I don't want to like just jump to the end, but just to kind of like, it's not a spoiler. I want Susan's story to be told. Everything that happens to it is insane. I can't even begin to fathom how she has comprehended this, how she makes sense of this. She has seen lights, which other people have seen and have been reported. She has seen stuff. She has witnessed stuff that multiple people.
But when you're saying, okay, multiple people have witnessed this type of phenomena, or multiple people witnessed it along with her?
Along with her. They were in the same area. That there's this huge refinery on the Milford Haven estuary, right? If anybody wants to go on my Instagram, it's the Paranormal Chronicles. There's loads and loads of pictures of Pembrokeshire, right? Just the coast and just gives you an idea of where I live. And there's these huge refineries, Dave, and everyone agrees when you drive over this big bridge to get to the south part of the county, you see all the refineries, right? You've got LNG gas, you've got all the oil refineries, you've got these big, huge oil tankers, you've got these huge chimneys and towers spewing fire and steam and just lights everywhere. And if anyone's ever seen the movie Blade Runner, it just looks like that. It just looks like that opening scene of Blade Runner, okay? And she was with this guy for company, and they drove. There's very sparse opportunities to get good fast food in Pembrokeshire. So they had to go for a long drive to get a McDonald's. If I can't say that, they ate under the Golden Arches, right? So they grabbed their fast food. And all along the estuary, there's these little points you can just pull up in your car. Little like concrete harbours and jetties and just little things sticking out, right? And you can just sit there, people fish. And over this is a huge bridge. So it used to be a toll bridge, okay? And all around it is houses, there's people fishing, there's a pub, there's just lots of activity. There's tugs going back and forth, tankers being loaded, unloaded, oil, all it's a very, very busy place. So her and this guy, they sat there in the car eating their fast food when they see a light coming down the estuary in amongst all the ships and stuff. And they just assumed it was a tug or the light of something. But this ball started to come towards the car. And she claims that there was like a big ball of light, which looked like to be filled with fire. And it hovered in front of the car. And she said everything in the car was just like electricity, just like static. And this guy, her boyfriend, for all intents and purposes, like, oh my God, we've just been buzzed by UFOs. And this UFO just shot off down the estuary. The date she gave me, that same night, a load of fishermen on the other side saw the light. People on the tugs saw the light. People in the cars saw the light. And for years and years, these balls of light have been seen traveling up and down the estuary, at incredible speeds, maneuvers, going straight up, going into the water. And one plausible explanation was, which didn't sit well with Susan, she didn't necessarily think that was very rational, was with all this chemicals and gases and environmental stuff going on, maybe possibly like a ball of fire when it's shot up in the air from one of these refining processes. Right, what if it gets trapped? I don't want to go the whole swamp gas thing. People will go, no, but we have a duty to look at every possibility. The idea of a ball of fire being trapped in a gas and being blown down the estuary is a possibility. But then something very interesting, a witness approached me separately to this case saying that they saw on the estuary, going down the estuary, a stealth class cruiser. So these cruisers, right, they're like the stealth aircraft. They're just like angles, like grey and black angles. And he said he saw that. Him and a load of people in the car saw it going down the estuary. There's always research vehicles and stuff there and ships because it's the second biggest estuary natural harbour in Europe. It's a very, very busy place. So Susan starts to think, I'm having this experience of seeing strange people and lights and the dog going missing, and now I've seen an actual UFO. And from there, she was just subjected to these really strange, surreal dreams, fantasies, whatever you want to call them. And she had 3 of them back to back. And every night, it was like they were a series of tests within a dream where she was fully lucid with what was going on. And it would always end with something very strange. But on the 3rd time, she was shown this horrendous apocalypse. Ships on fire, the water on fire, the sky's burning, there's ash, there's craters, there's people melting. children dying. And she doesn't understand why she was shown that. Is it that the human race is futile? Now, I was talking to someone recently, because what I like about Harvest is everyone's got their own interpretation. Everyone's got an idea. And even though the book was handed over to John Hunt Publishing in January 2019, I've had the opportunity to reflect and think, okay, that was interesting. And if you were an advanced alien species and you came to this planet, right, what would you think of us? What would you actually think of us?
Dirty, dirty little monkeys.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're all over the place. We're not this isn't, and I can't speak on behalf of Susan for this, and I'm certainly not speaking on behalf of myself, like for about the point, but this book isn't like an environmental message, look after the planet. You can take that from it. This isn't about animal welfare, but again, you can take that from this. These things come to our planet, right? We are a tribalistic race of people, right? We breed like there's no tomorrow. We take like there's no tomorrow. We can't get on with each other. You've got a beard. He hasn't got a beard. He likes that football team. He likes this football team. That guy prefers guys. That guy prefers women. That guy votes Republican. That guy votes Democrat. And guess what? We're going to have a row about it. And we're going to go home. We're going to be pent up. And we're going to argue and debate and get on our keyboards and have these rants. That's who we are. It's in our nature. For all the good we do, at the end of the day, we are a creature that is, and I don't mean to offend anybody by this. This is just my interpretation. It's what Nisha said. We are a creature that is somewhere halfway between chimp and God. We're an animal with a soul, with some moral codes and ethics, a sense of spirituality, a sense to wonder what happens when we die, to nurture, to love. We've got all of that. But at the end of the day, we eat and we procreate and we fight. Somebody broke into your house, Dave. You won't be nice, Dave, for very long. You're going to be Dave the caveman, Dave the protector, Dave the man who's going to kick some ass, right?
So I'm probably going to be Dave the guy hiding in the closet while my wife, she's the one with the weapons and training. So yes, but I get what you're saying.
So she was really confused to why they would give her this visual. Was it a case of it's a warning, Doesn't seem much of a warning if they're going to harvest you eventually, or is it a case of, look, this is what your race is doomed for? So has she been given a prophecy of destruction on the scale that we can't imagine? Is it isolated to Pembrokeshire, or is that a worldwide event? Is that the refineries blowing up, or the LNG gas? Go on YouTube, people, put in LNG gas exploding. Holy moly, that is one terrifying explosion. I have seen it rip motorways apart. It's just insane stuff. So there was, it's very difficult. I'm jumping around, but I just want to give everyone a taster so they can kind of work out, is this their book? Is this something they'd be interested in? But there seemed to be more than just one creature. There was this one creature that was very spindly black with his crash helmet in reverse head, this big shiny bulbous head. Then there was another creature which she described, and this is insane. If me and you were just talking in a bar, Dave, and people were listening, they'd just what the heck is this guy been smoking, right? She saw a creature that she described as a bulbous sac, like a jellyfish, on incredibly skinny legs, like tendrils. And inside it had some kind of bioluminescent light. Now, things got so bad. She was living with her auntie at the time, that things got so bad that she would sleep with her bedroom door open, and her auntie, who slept opposite, would also do the same. And her auntie was in bed with the cat, and Susan woke up from the third night. She's drained. She's ill. She's lost weight. She's ill. She's just so ill. She's got irregular periods. She's got bowel troubles. She's tired. She's got pains in her eyes. She's got pains in her groin. She's just not right. This is just so intense for her. She's getting pains in her head, behind her eyes. And she wakes one night from, it's like a horror film when they wake from a nightmare, but then they're still in the nightmare, yeah? She wakes and she looks, and one of these bulbous sacs is stood on the bed of her auntie with tubes coming out of it, going up her auntie's nose and in her mouth. And it's gone into the cat's mouth and cat's nose and has lifted it off the bed, right? So she wakes up. And she wakes up to hearing her auntie being sick in the toilet. She goes out, what's up, auntie? She's exhausted herself. Now I think I've got a stomach flu. She's ill. She's got a nosebleed. Susan's like, I think, she kind of opens up to her auntie about it, about what's been going on, which you would. You would have to eventually just tell someone, like, and within a few days, the cat was dead, and the auntie would be dead within a few months of severe cancer.
Holy cow. And did that come out of the blue, the cancer?
Came out of the blue. Now, anybody can have cancer that has been misdiagnosed or undiagnosed. A very dear friend of mine, he passed away. He was working. He never took a day's work. He was sick in his life. And one night he went home because he had really bad stomach. He collapsed in his hall. And when they investigated, he was riddled with stomach cancer. It spread all through his body, just gone undetected because he'd never gone to the doctor. They put him in a coma and he was dead 5 days later. So if that does happen, it doesn't necessarily about you being interfered or whatever by aliens. But when you start to read Harvest, the true story of alien abduction, you start putting all these things together. You start to think there's something going on. There's something going on. And it's not just Susan. There's tens of thousands of people across the planet all having their own abduction theories. Some of them are pleasant. Some of them claim that there's some hybridization program. Some of them say they've just been probed and experimented. Some people claim they were given great spiritual gifts. As Paul Wallace said in Escape from Eden, there's a cabal. There's a cabal in place. And there's an agreement amongst these races that you will only take so many. So if you think about it, right, you take 2 people from America, 2 people from Canada, 2 people from Britain every night, right? There's like 214 countries in the world, right? You just take 2 people from each one of them, right? That's like 400 odd people, right? Just vanish. Nobody notices. Over a year, you're talking tens of thousands of people. Over decades, hundreds of thousands of people. Doesn't matter. Nobody's going to notice them.
Horrific. Absolutely. Now, with all of these maladies and pains and aches that Susan is dealing with, does she go to the doctor to see if there's any kind of insight or information they can give her about what's going on with her own physicality?
Iron deficiency. They put it down as an iron deficiency. They said that she needed to eat more broccoli and more greens. And to be honest, she didn't even want to push it. She didn't even want to push it because she knew that wasn't the case. You can't sit. A woman of her standing can't sit. This is her perception, by the way. This isn't me putting words into her mouth. A woman of her standing does not go to her local general practitioner and say, I've seen a bulbous thing kill the cat and balls of light, and she couldn't. Because people say to me, why isn't Susan talking about this, right? And Susan will talk about this when 2 things happen. When it's open for us to talk about this in a safe environment where you're always going to get bullies and trolls. You're always going to get that. People are going to be challenged. They don't like it. People are listening to me now going, oh, yeah, I don't believe that. I think we should start believing it because those little nuggets of truth are coming out. And the second thing, and the most important thing of all, is this: when her parents have died, because she does not want her parents to feel the shame that this incredible daughter that was given life on a silver platter is running around talking about giant jellyfish and apocalypses and UFOs and people being harvested.
Are there any physical scars or anything on her, around her vagina, anus, any of the places where she feels tender and like she's been probed?
No, I asked her. I had to ask. I offered her, did she want me to bring in a female? Because obviously we're talking about personal things, physical things. And there was nothing that she could feel that was different after a time. What she believes is that they come and they take people in stages. Now, time doesn't mean anything to them. She had a very incredibly strange encounter with a red alien being that slowed time, but just stopped time. She had experiences with a car. Things would follow the car and the car wouldn't work. She had experiences of dreams where she'd be walking through fields naked with other women.
Would there ever be like something foreshadowing that today was going to be a day she was going to have an encounter?
Yeah, it's really strange you should say that. Because it was such a prolonged experience, she started trying to make sense of what was happening. And there's these small red lights would often herald the arrival of something more. And she used to call them the shepherds. That was just a name. She's not saying they were shepherds, but she used to call them the shepherds. It was like it was seeing where the flock was. And whenever she would see these red lights in the future, she just knew that something was coming. And it normally did herald it, like car breaking down, like this thing would just, like, she was driving down a dark country road in the mountainous area, the hills, Brusselli Hills, and a car was following her, and then the car broke down and the car behind just lifted up and just gone, and then a red light appeared. And it was really interesting what I've done a little bit of research on it, and you're probably knowledgeable and more on this, that there was so much imagery of owls and foxes. And when you look at alien abduction cases, it's like these aliens try to mask what you're actually seeing by putting like imprints into your memories that you've seen an owl, you've seen a fox. People claim, abduction cases I've studied recently, say that they have these dreams that raccoons are knocking over the bins. And when they have hypnotherapies, it's a grey alien or an alien, or a deer, things with big eyes. And there was so much imagery. There was such a juxtaposition between imagery of owls and foxes as opposed to actual alien beings. It was like, this is what really intrigues me. Is like, I think a lot of people who have been abducted probably don't realize they've been abducted. They put it down to a strange dream. But there was something in Susan that allowed her to break the spell, if that makes sense. So she could see behind the curtain. She could see behind the mask. So sometimes it would be surreal, vivid dreams, and other times she would see what was actually there. So when she was on this cavernous cathedral-like, I don't know what to call it, a spacecraft, a factory, a base, I don't know what to call it. She saw it for what it was, and it was horrific. It was absolutely horrific. And you were talking earlier about the effect.
Well, let me ask you really quickly there. Since she recognized where she was, she recognized kind of what she was doing and what was being done to her. Did she recognize being abducted with the same people? Or were there always different groupings of people that she would see?
Different from the experiences she gave to me. There's always different people. So just to give you an example, and I apologize to your listeners because this is such a strange case. Like, you need to kind of like interpret it yourself. So she'd have a dream that she'd come out the woods and she would be frightened. An owl, a really big owl, was going to attack it. But in front of her would be a fox, and the fox would run into the long grass, and everything was lit in this red light. So she'd be naked and she'd walk through this long grass. And as she walked just in the same direction, she'd find other women of all ages, youngsters, old women. She recalls a woman, an African lady. She recalls a very old German lady. She remembers a child that she carried. And eventually there would be like a herd of naked women walking towards this point. And she'd wake up, bump. But one time she didn't wake up and she saw what happened. And what was happening was they'd get to a certain point and there'd be like a funnel, like a hoover would just suck these people up. And she said she was there one night with a woman with dementia. And this woman was spinning around in this vortex, just laughing. And then you'd end up in this huge cavernous space, really stuffy. She couldn't give much detail. She couldn't tell you if it was in space, underground, underwater. She couldn't tell you any of that. It was this very cavernous place. There's lights everywhere. And there was these red lights with like wings on either side, just flying about. And there was rows and rows and rows of naked women. And she claimed that her mouth had been covered up, like there was no mouth there, which I don't think is a physical thing they would have done. It would be a psychological thing. You could hypnotize someone to say you can't hear. You can hypnotize someone to say you can't speak, And these people were led into a very, very tight, narrow corridor. And some women fell. And these lights would just pick them up with this small, thin tube and just fly off of them. And she said there was women soiling themselves, weeing themselves. It was damp. It was stinking of sweat. There was people just murmuring. It was just this horrific situation. She said in this corridor, she described it, because we can only describe things in what we know. And she said it was like some kind of mince meat. It was like this organic substance. And they led her into a bigger room, and she realized that her mouth was open and everyone's taking deep breaths. People are crying, people consoling themselves. It's really, really, really upsetting. Like, just talking, this is like talking to you in depth about it is really upsetting. And these tubes had come out the wall. This is what she claims. I wasn't there, you weren't there, I don't know. And they would scrape the vagina, the anus, the inside of the mouth, the inside of the nose, the inside of the ears. There's needles going in, and off they would go. Now, there was layers of this place. This place was huge, and below them...
And were these always the same alien race? I mean, you seem to have talked about these bulbous things, then the red aliens. You know, I mean, were there multiple aliens aboard these craft or in this hospital or ward that would be tending to her?
It was, imagine, this is my interpretation and the information I got from Susan. When cattle go to the abattoir, they're just led down corridors, yeah? And then bump, bump, bump. They just get a bolt in the head. Now, there seems to be a hierarchy. She only saw the red-faced alien once, the one that seemed to slow time. The red flying things, the shepherds, they were very prevalent. The tall, skinny black creatures with a shiny black head, she used to think of them as like a controller, like they were like the people in charge, or they were the top of this like hierarchy. But the next thing she saw was there was like a pit of this organic mass, and she said there was women, loads of women giving birth, right? There was pregnant women huddled in the corners, and on the floor there was just women squatting, lying down, giving birth. And as soon as the baby came out, this red light thing would come, it would take the baby, wouldn't cut the umbilical cord, it would just rip it and tear it, and next thing one of those bulbous things would come and just drop onto the woman. She claims that she saw artificial insemination on an industrial scale with the bottom half of men with their full genitals ready to perform with pipes and tubes and all kinds of stuff. She claims she saw older women and infirm women and what she could only imagine with diseased women in this kind of area in like a cone where they couldn't get traction to climb out. And there was this device that would literally grab a woman and suck everything out of them and just leave like some skin, which would just go down her hull. And that was kind of like the last experience she had. And what she believes is over time, you progress through this system until eventually they just, like at the beginning, they're taking samples, they're scraping. It looks like that some women are being kept on board and being inseminated. And it looks like some women are actually being entirely harvested of all their being. It's terrifying. If that is real, okay, right. Just say it's sci-fi, it's fiction, it's a delusion, right? Okay, that woman has got incredible fantasy. She's got a very dark mind. Very, very dark mind. But if it is real, just for a moment, we just ask ourselves, what if this is real? What if that was our daughter or our wife or our mum or our best friend or our girlfriend? Maybe we need to start talking about this, because people have been talking about alien abduction since centuries, maybe time immemorial. It's always been happening. It's always part of our mythology. Cattle mutilations, hybridizations, alien abductions, whether it's Roswell or Rendlesham or the Pembrokeshire UFO incident or Billy Meyer or whatever. There's just a huge part of our narrative, our history, our culture is UFO phenomena. And then now, while the world is falling to bits, we're getting all this information. Yeah, actually, our best pilots, our best aircraft, we can't keep up with this. We don't know what they are. And they're coming here and we have no idea. It's got to the stage, right? These stereo sun satellites, they're taking pictures of the sun all the time, right? There's so much stuff going in front of the sun. They just put a pixel in front of it now. They just put a pixel just to hide it. They can't even be bothered to come up with an explanation. People go on, there's a Borg cube out in front of the sun. No, it's a pixel that's been put there to hide something else. The International Space Station, NASA have given up trying to hide stuff now. It's so regular, stuff is seen zooming past. There's just so much of it now. The NASA have just given up. They just don't mention it.
Now, Susan, You said that was kind of her last experience. How long ago was that?
That would have been, so about 2009. That would have probably been about 2012, 2013. So it was an intense period over about 4 or 5 years. And there was a period then when nothing happened apart from the dread, the fear, the anxiety. You know, she's really kind of researching it. She made a decision to go to Australia. She wrote me an email, which I have in the book. It's a really touching email. Whether it's delusional, she's mentally ill, or this is real, it's really sad, her email. And we have an agreement. If I don't hear from her in 2.5 years, then I can disclose her information, and not that will help, but I can give more credence to it. So I have heard from her recently. She is in Australia. So she is alive and well.
Has she had any experiences over the last 8 years?
None.
Why does she feel then that it's kind of a death sentence for her?
Because of what she saw. They take what they need when they need it, and then they'll come back. You're marked. That's the way she described it. And something very interesting was she believes that it follows bloodlines. You know, she had images of her grandmother. She had images of herself as a little girl. She believes that it follows bloodlines. And this is speculative now. I've got nothing that I can cement this, but her mum is so clinical in her oppression of anything that is not rational that Susan believes, and so did I, that maybe her mother knew more. But there was no way Susan could speak to her, just for the shame of it. It's like, you know, I don't want to compare it. I don't want to make light of it or anything, but it's like probably be like knowing you're gay, but you can't tell your dad because you just know it's going to wreck his life if you come out and said, you know what, Dad, I'm a homosexual. You just know it's just not something he's going to accept. And it happens. Not everyone is liberal and open-minded. And nothing has happened since that. You know, we're talking, 6 years, whatever it is now, 5-6 years. But the threat is always there. She's seen the other people. She's seen the other people in the field. She's seen the other people on this construct, this abattoir, this factory, whatever you want to call it. And she just believes it's a matter of time before they'll come back and get her.
You were speaking to her how long after these abductions had taken place?
She claimed this all started in about 2009. I started speaking to her 2014, late 2014, and the main sessions then went on for about 2 years. There was a period then when I was complete in haunted horror of Haverfordwest because I was already kind of like in that as well. And then I went back to her in 2018 with the final manuscript. There's a couple of points, a couple of notes that I needed to work on. I really wanted this to be thorough. I wanted this to be so thorough. I want people to read it and get the detail they need to make up their own mind, their own conclusion. I didn't want to leave anything else. It might be too detailed for some people. I think I've done a good job of getting that detail to tell her account, her alleged narrative or her real experience. And so the book was published. It was handed over to publish 2019. She headed off. Oddly enough, she headed off around the last time I heard from her was the day I came on your show, which was November 2018. And that's when she said she was heading off. She was leaving and she was going to Australia. And she's been in that area ever since. And I heard from her recently and she's fine.
That's good, at least, that aspect of it. When you were talking to her, Gavin, and going through this, did it ever seem to, did things start to happen to her while she was reliving this and talking about it, like she was drawing its attention? Or now that you look back at it with hindsight, did you have strange activity start to mount up around you?
Only one thing that affected me, because she says, it's in the book, she says to me, everybody who gets close to me, something bad happens to them. And that's why she's got to live alone. That's why she can't have a boyfriend. That's why she can't, that's why she's estranged herself from her family. Her father, right? He was so good to her. The examples of his care and love and generosity is just heartbreaking that she can't open up about this perceived experience, yeah. And there was one night I was walking home, and I had all of this in my head, and I was walking through the town is it's dark, it's sleeping, the town's asleep. I'm walking, looking up at the stars, thinking, if this is true, everything changes right now. I now have this responsibility to do this account justice for everyone out there who's had a UFO experience or an alleged alien abduction. And I've got two phones. Like Walter White, I have two phones, right? One is for business, one is for pleasure. So I went home, I got into bed, and I was just like, all this paperwork and notes and little side notes. I'm profoundly dyslexic, and I've just got sheets of paper everywhere. And I'm like, this is, have I bitten off a bit more than I can chew? And my personal phone went, and it was just this horrific noise. Like a clicking, like a static and a clicking. And I won't lie to you, Dave. At that time, I was like, holy hell, I'm really paranoid now. I was really paranoid. But then that was it. Nothing's happened. The book's been at the publisher since January 2019. It's been available to buy for about a month. People have been reviewing it. I've had the pleasure to come in and speak to you. It's pretty much number one in every category on Amazon across the world right now. And if people want to digest this and take what they will, then great. But what I'd love is people to read Harvest, The True Story of Alien Abduction. Just tell me what they think it is. That would be great. What a great way. What a great scientific experiment to get everyone's perceptions, everyone's take on it. What was their interpretation of what happened? Because I think if enough people read it, we all get together and we talk about it, then maybe we can come to some conclusions. Now, the other side of that coin is if people read Harvest, The True Story of Alien Abduction, they think, do you know what? This is real. I believe this. Then we need to get in touch with our governments. We need to say, what is going on? Do you know about this? Are there people sat at home right now waiting for someone to return who's been missing years, who are never coming back? Never coming back. Are there people now, good people, waking up in the middle of the night with pains, cramps, blinding pains in their eyes, in their vagina, all across their body, seeing strange lights, too scared to tell anyone because they're going to be scrutinized and bullied and trolled by people online saying about little green men and tinfoil hats? We're at a turning point. I don't want to sound dramatic, but we are at a turning point now where we need to know.
Do you think we're going to get accountability and answers?
No, I don't think we're going to get accountability. That's never going to happen. We've been told for 70 years that the UFO phenomenon doesn't exist, but now we've just been told that it does. Somebody's been lying. One way you look at it, maybe they were lying to protect us. Maybe they were lying because it was too much to handle. Paul Wallace in Escaping from Eden said that the Catholic Church have got a PR, press release ready for the day we are told that sophisticated alien life exists, so they can control the narrative, but it fits in within the Catholic dogma. Yeah. So the governments know, the organizations know what they know. That's open to conspiracy and speculation. Did the government know there was a crashed spaceship at Roswell? I don't know any of that. All I know now is that the most powerful nation on the planet has told us there are aircraft coming into your airspace, all our airspace, right? And we can't keep up with them. Our best pilots and our best aircraft, with the technology we have, can't keep up with these things. They're not Russian. They're not North Korean. They're not drones. They're not comets or geese or Venus or swamp gas. These are real vehicles doing extraordinary things. One of the accounts said that there was a point these fighter aircraft were going to go as a rendezvous point, and the radar operator said, "You're not going to believe it. It's already there." So he knew where they were going. It's like, this is not some guy on a forum, conspiracy forum. This isn't some UFO website. This is the Pentagon. This is United States government telling us there's stuff. And it's not just them. Japan, Russia, Belgium, countries of that ilk, Australia, New Zealand, they've already admitted there's aliens. They've got UFOs coming into our airspace.
With
sorry.
Susan's story, though, let me ask you. I mean, I don't want to put you completely on a, an awkward site, but I'm just curious. What do you believe is true regarding her story? Do you believe the entire thing? Do you believe part of it? Do you believe any of it is misunderstood or just lucid dreams?
From all the people I've spoken to over, I started investigating and collating ghost stories and myths when I was 11. I'm 45. I've spoken to all manner of people. I've come on shows like yours, spoken to people who call in. I've spoken to so many different people, Dave. Maybe I'm the sucker here, maybe I'm the mark, but she's not like anyone else I've ever spoken to. It's not infatuation. It's not like I was trying to sleep with her or there's a romantic involvement. Yeah, of course she was beautiful. But there was someone there who's very sullen, someone whose life could have been so much more. Now, there is psychological aspects of this that we could delve into, and that is there's a complex where we get so guilty by how we treat animals that we create fantasies that it will happen to ourselves. Yeah? So, so you could put that into account. But when you put it all together, when you put everything from page 1 to page 160 of Harvest, you've got to start thinking, something happened to that woman. Something happened. Even if it's just 5% or 10% is based in reality, that 5 or 10% is horrific, is terrifying. Whatever happened scared that young woman enough to live a solitude life without friends and family, to give up their career and travel, like Kane, from Kung Fu, traveling the Australian outback and then heading off down to New Zealand, just keeping moving because she just thinks that's her last day. That's either tremendous psychological damage or something has affected that girl to the degree she can no longer have an ordinary life. People who know will know. People who've experienced the same as her will know. But for me and you and Tim and the people out there who are a little bit skeptical or not sure, I guess we're blessed. Maybe it's best not to know. Maybe it's best we just die old men in our beds, never knowing the truth.
Good stuff. Crazy story. The book, again, we have a link to it on today's program. Harvest, the true story of alien abduction. G.L. Davies, the author. Gavin, thank you for celebrating Halloween with us and bringing a little bit of this holiday season to our listeners, sharing a truly terrifying and bizarre experience with alien abductions.
Oh, Dave and Tim, thank you so much. And happy Halloween, everyone. Just keep safe, okay? We're in a really rough time right now, but we will get out of it. Things will get better and we will have some sense of normality. And guess what? 2021, maybe harvest comes true for all of us.
God, I hope not. I don't know that I need scrapings and scratchings in my private areas there, Gavin, but Tim might sign up for it. He's always up for a good time on the weekend.
Maybe if I have an extra weekend open, I could use a good scraping. Who knows?
Gavin, thank you again, and keep in touch with us, sir. Be safe. And if you're going out with a final investigation, this was one hell of an investigation to go out with. Before I let you go, though, I am curious. Has anyone else come forward to you with a story similar to this now that you've done this? Because once you kind of open that door, it seems the universe delivers others to us. What do you think?
Well, believe it or not, in Harvest, the true story of alien abduction, the last chapter is while I was finalizing the manuscript, I put a shout out just to people on my paranormalchronicles.com website who was saying anyone in Pembrokeshire had any strange dreams, and I collated a lot, and there's some strange stuff, some really strange stuff. And some of them tie in. People seeing red lights on rivers and estuaries, people thinking they've seen skinny men. This was before the book was published. And one thing which was really strange, which I did learn after the book was in production, maybe I'll put it in an amended edition later on. 32 people, make sense of this as you will, okay? I've got an explanation for you. You can interpret this as you will. 32 people in Pembrokeshire over the same summer all had the same dream, that there was a moon in the sky and next to it was the same moon, but it was red and it was revolving. What is that about?
I don't know.
Isn't that strange?
Don't know.
What a strange thing to dream. I can't.
Strange.
I don't know if that's related or is that a psychological malady. You know, a lot of people dream they're back in school. A lot of people dream they've gone to work naked. It's just such a strange dream that in Pembrokeshire that all these people dream in 2 moons in the sky and one of them's red and it revolves. Really strange. I haven't got a conclusion to that. It's just one of the many, many mysteries of this investigation. It's just Pembrokeshire. When all this COVID stuff's over, come to Pembrokeshire, guys, and just do your own investigation. There's stuff on the estuary all the time. Someone on YouTube recently put this huge light was above the refinery, bright light, and it just vanished. You know, there's stuff going on down here all the time.
Well, stay safe, my friend. Stay safe.
Dave.
And
you,
thank you
Tim.
for sharing. It's been a pleasure. I hope you all enjoyed this special bonus Halloween edition of Darkness Radio. We'll be back again next week. True Crime Tuesday on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. More of the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave. That's Tim. You've been listening to our Halloween edition of the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio.